All right. Hello, everybody. Let's make sure the audio is working on YouTube here. Um, yep, here we are. We're working. Sorry, I'm just checking on YouTube because I'm new at this. I'm your host. Welcome to Oil Swims Live. I'm your host, Josiah, and I have a very special guest with me today, George Hobbs. How you doing, George?
Great, Josiah. Thanks for having me, man. It's good to chat with you again. It's been a while.
Oh yeah, it's awesome. Introduce yourself. Let the people know what you do and who you are.
Yeah, what I do, it's a lot. It's a wide realm of things, but first and foremost, I'm a husband, a father, a grandfather. We homestead the best we can. We raise chickens for eggs, for meat. We saw kind of what 2020, what was things to come, so we changed our lives. But getting back to what I am and what I do, I've had a podcast. I've had a podcast called The Fact Hunter for the last 4 years, I guess. And we started going down all the conspiratorial realms, as they say. And at first, when you first wake up, I've been, as they say, awake for about a decade to realizing that what we are told is going on in the world is completely different than what is actually going on. And then you start to connect some dots, and it's fun, and you're anxious to learn the next rabbit hole. But after a while, you start to realize that there's a lot more to this than just connecting dots and figuring out that, the lies about 9/11, Oklahoma City, I mean, you name it. You realize that there's really a nefarious agenda to what's really going on. So I took it more serious, and I realized that we were in a spiritual battle. It was much bigger than these rabbit holes. And then one day I got an email from a guy named David Weiss, and it said Flat Earth, and I laughed and I deleted it and kept going about my day. But for some reason, it just kept eating at me because I'd heard about it, obviously, and a silly flat earthers. That guy must have not got past the third grade, right? That's what we all thought. But, I always told everyone, send me an email. I respond to everyone. I felt bad. The next day I went back, pulled his email out of the trash bin, back into the inbox. I read it. And there was a link on there, and I don't remember which one it was, but I think it was he and Tro 777 having a conversation. And I think it was a Saturday, not a lot going on at the time. We had just moved back to Delaware. I hit the play button, and 90 minutes later, I was like, uh-oh. There's a lot of this that's making sense. So I ended up inviting him on the Fact Hunter podcast, which is, again, all the realms of conspiracy, as they say. Conspiracy facts, not conspiracy theories. And I had him on, and you guys know, I'm sure most people listening to your podcast, your YouTube channel, know who David is. And he just made an absolute stunning presentation to me. I kept going forward with it, and literally for 2 weeks of my life, I was just consumed by it. And I had gone down other rabbit holes that affected me, specifically 9/11, because, listen, that affected every single person in one way or another. And I ended up doing 4 tours in Iraq because of that event. So, it changed everybody's life. It took away a lot of your freedoms with the Patriot Act. But with Flat Earth, it was a whole different animal. And literally for 2 weeks, my world was turned upside down. I know everybody we've had, so I ended up, long story short, I ended up having Dave on the Fact Hunter. Great presentation. I thought it was my best show to date. And the next morning I checked my email, and, I thought you were a critical thinker. You've disrespected your podcast. And I got all this negative feedback. And I didn't really realize at the time that even within the truth community, that Flat Earth was still a stigma. And I had a radio show at the time. I had a 2-hour radio show every week on Revolution Radio for over a year. And the quickest way to lose an audience was to bring up Flat Earth. But I also, after months and months of pursuing Flat Earth, I realized, similar to the other rabbit holes, the spiritual implications that Flat Earth has. These people, for the last 500 years at least, going back to Copernicus, have been using this as, I call the 3 parts of hiding God. You have evolution, you have the Big Bang Theory, and you have heliocentrism. And all three of those things are intertwined together. So I wanted to start a podcast, but Flat Earth is one of those things that are really easier to talk about in video format. And YouTube doesn't like me whatsoever. So I thought, well, I'm going to start a little podcast, came up with the Flat Earth Files name, and I just laid it out in an order that I thought would be easy for folks to consume. The first episode, which was November of 2022, was entitled Why the Lie? Because if you want to get people interested, you have to really get them to understand why this particular topic is so important. And, you know, we can talk about the financial aspect of it with NASA getting $70 million a day, which most of that money, if you just Google NASA contractors, you will see that most of the NASA contractors are the same companies that are involved in the military industrial complex. So, you know, why the lie? Then you start to break down things, you know, whether it's Captain Cook's 60,000-mile journey around Antarctica, the Antarctic Peace Treaty, all these things, you lay it out in a smart order. And then I started getting emails from listeners saying, hey, I'd like to come on. And so this whole thing has turned into, we're just everyday people come on the podcast, on the Flat Earth Files, and they share their stories, their struggles, their journey to the truth, how becoming a, you know, flat earther has impacted their life, both in positive and negative ways. You know, I got an email, I think Monday, from a listener who was at a Bible study the previous Wednesday. And I guess it was his night to teach. And he decided he had the courage to bring up biblical cosmology, right? AKA flat earth. And literally some people got up and left. And the pastor, the head pastor, was not happy with him. And they had a golf tournament, I guess for charity or something, that following Saturday, and they're in the tee box. And he was shocked. The pastor came up to him and says, hey, while we're waiting for these guys to tee off, why don't you tell us a little bit more about biblical cosmology? So he planted that seed. It is something that challenges everything you've ever been taught. So it is, you know, everybody who has had children, there's some children who won't swallow a pill, right? It's a big pill to swallow. It challenges everything you've ever been taught. But when you plant that seed, sometimes it'll get people thinking. So again, if you want to make change, prayer is important, but prayer without action is fruitless. So, you know, he felt compelled to say that. He planted the seed. A few days later, they came back to him, approached him, and said, why don't you talk a little bit more about it? And he was able to preach that message. So we have 2 podcasts now because I guess one wasn't enough. It's busy. But on one side with the Fact Hunter, I think it's very important that we, one, look back at history, understand the lies of history, because many of the things that you've been told, many of the people who have been held up high on pedestals are not what they seem. They're not what they're taught in our history books. And we'll talk about that as well, the people who control the history books. And then with the Flat Earth Files, you know, we continue to share people's stories and their journeys to the truth and the successes and the failures they've had in planting those seeds. So I think I've said enough. Sorry.
Awesome. Just so you know, I'm like trying to figure out, because apparently you're echoing, but I think it's through my end. And so hopefully I'm not echoing. My wife's getting.
Yeah, I put my mix minus on. That should be an issue.
It's weird because I can totally, I don't hear the echo in my head and you don't hear it in your head, but for some reason, apparently they're hearing an echo on that end. So anyways, whatever. So I'm muting myself whenever you're talking, and so hopefully that all works okay. But anyways, so yeah, your podcast is freaking awesome, the Flat Earth Files. I remember a friend sent it to me because he followed your Fact Hunter podcast, and then I started listening, and I was like, this is awesome. And I'd already come into flat Earth, you know, quote unquote flat Earth at that point. And so and then I came on to your podcast, and that was awesome. And I still get emails from people from that podcast, which is awesome. So people, just recently someone emailed me and they're like, they said they listened to our podcast 3 times in a row, and I was like, what the heck?
Wow.
And so he's asking me questions, specifically, I think because my podcast is more centered on the biblical canon and extra biblical texts, and so people tend to have questions about that. Most people, when they come on your podcast, they just tell their testimony and their story about how they came into flat Earth. But I kind of focus, if you've seen my channel, I kind of focus on the biblical side and extra biblical side, and so it was really awesome to. Literally a year ago, May 4th. Today's May 3rd, so tomorrow would be 1 year anniversary of when I went onto your podcast. I remember because May the 4th be with you.
Yeah, Star Wars Day, as they say, right?
which is funny. But I labeled this. I titled this podcast, this stream. I titled it "The Secret History," and hopefully we can get a little bit more into some of that, which you wanted to talk to, and how it correlates with modern day. And you talk a lot about homesteading and you're taking care of chickens and stuff. I recently got a bunch of quail, and
awesome.
They're a lot smaller. I have a quail box, right? And so preparing for whatever may happen. Something that I would like to point out, everyone's looking at a certain event to take place, and I don't know if there's going to be an event, even though this is an election year. But I would like to hear your thoughts on that at some point, maybe at the end. But where do you want to start with when it comes to history?
Well, I think we can start with education, who controls the history books, and maybe where the country was hijacked, for lack of better words. I've actually been researching lately, because we always talk about our founding fathers, etc. There's a theory out there that it's possible that Britain used Washington to actually wrangle the states up and bring kind of keep control, to keep a close eye on them. And here's why. If you Google, Washington's little statue where he's buried, it's made very clear that he was a Freemason first and a president second. And then, of course, the other founding father was Benjamin Franklin, and he controlled most of the printing presses throughout the colonial area, the 13 colonies. So understand that those who control the country have been controlling, for the most part, much of the mass media for the last 250 years. A lot of the things that we've seen over the last 5 years specifically, it's nothing new under the sun. It's just the fact that we see it now, and we're aware to the fact that 6 conglomerates own 96% of the media corporations. But your history books, you'll see certain things that are in there. Go ahead.
Quick. So 1776 was the signing of the
the Declaration was 76, and the Constitution was what, 1787?
Yeah. 1776, coincidentally, is the same year that the Illuminati was formed, which is
exactly May 1st, 1776.
Yeah. Anyways, I just wanted to plug that in because you're talking about it. So keep.
Yeah, that's an important fact. And again, there's no coincidences. Just like going back to flat Earth, Copernicus was he was challenged by Martin Luther in 1532. The guy who was in charge of the Protestant Reformation. At a meal, it's written that Martin Luther said that heliocentrism was a blasphemy to God's word. And again, before being a flat earther, I didn't even know what the firmament was. It was just a word in the Bible. I didn't research it. But for me, once you learn these things, it brings new meaning and more clarity to the Bible. But yeah, there's no coincidences. Obviously, May 1st, 1776, the forming of the Illuminati. There was 2 major groups. You had the Freemasons, the Illuminati, and the Jesuits, kind of all intertwined to a certain aspect. But most people don't even know there was an actual party, right? You had the Whig Party back in the day, but there was a party in the 1530s that were actually called the Anti-Mason Party. And their whole ticket was bound on keeping Freemasons out of government. And they were around for 10 years in the the 1830s. And then they came back a couple more times, but you guys know what happens when you go against the machine. Just ask the January 6th protesters how that went for them. And then there was a guy, I think everybody knows who Samuel Morse is, the guy who invented the Morse code. He was also one of the men, he was the guy, many of the early presidential paintings. He was one of the great painters of the 19th century, and many of the early presidential portraits were done by Samuel Morse. Now, there was a very famous, I don't remember if it was a speech or something he wrote, where he warned of the infiltration of the Jesuits into the government as well. And that is something, everybody's heard of the Illuminati, everybody's heard of Freemasons, but the Jesuits are also, what's the name of the movie that Tom Hanks was in Italy? The Dan Brown books. Yeah, that is something that if you go back and watch those, understanding the Illuminati and the Jesuits, it makes a lot more sense, because they do use Hollywood as disclosure, right? Of course, everybody's seen that new trailer for that movie, Fly Me to the Moon, which is about them lying about going to the moon. This is how they disclose, yeah, we lied. It's in your face. They mock us. But really, our history took a right-hand turn or a left-hand turn, or whatever you want to say, during the Civil War, because much of everything that you're taught about the Civil War is, again, what they want you to hear. In our society, when somebody holds up an individual or a group or tells you not to talk about them, there's a reason for it. There's a reason Alex Jones got a $1 billion judgment against him. They don't want you to talk about that certain subject because people were they were figuring out, hey, there's something not right about this. So that's their way of trying to scare people and not talking about it. And then you had, again, January 6th. People are never going to, they'll be deathly afraid to protest in D.C. again, right? Because why? Because they've seen grandmas. I interviewed Master Sergeant Jeremy Brown from prison twice. Was a guy who was set up. He didn't step foot in there.
Sorry. I just wanted to say it's the Da Vinci Code, but he also did Angels and Demons. Yeah.
Yeah, that little trilogy that Dan Brown did. Great books. The books are much better, obviously, than the movies. But after you wake up and you watch these things, you see the 33s and you see all these type of disclosures, and you realize Hollywood is used to disclose, but also Manly P. Hall wrote that once the veils fall from a man's eyes, when you start to see the symbols and the numbers, when you can understand, for lack of better words, the enemy's code, right? I mean, how many logos out there have 666 in them, from Google, Chrome, every major corporation's logo, Universal, Paramount with the, all of that stuff, Disney with the firmament.
They nod real quick before I want to, give us some ground rules before we move forward with some of this stuff, because, the new bill that's passed in the Senate. I don't want to like interrupt you, but I want to be careful when we talk about can we say J's instead of J-E-U's, if that makes sense, if we talk about that? Can we use
they're two totally different entities.
Right. Can we use Z's instead of Z-I-O-Nists? You know what I mean? And stuff like that, if we get into that.
Yeah, that's not going to come up at all. That's why I've been very vague about everything.
Well, I would like to maybe these concepts that you're talking about, the Masons, they're the builders. That if anybody's wondering what the G is when it comes to the Mason symbolism, that G stands for Gadriel, which is the master builder. Now that master builder is the angel that was in Enoch 69 that came down who taught mankind how the secret knowledge and taught them weapons and this light illumination in a sense. And so, and that deity is Saturn, which is the sun god, or the black sun. And that black sun is literally the symbol of the state of the Zionists, if that makes sense. The star of Remphan, which is mentioned in Acts 7. So this stuff,
that's right.
It doesn't start with America. It goes all the way back to Babylon and before the flood of Noah. So this deity, the G, stands for Gadriel, Master Builder, Geomatria. This is because they're Masons, they're builders, they're using geometry, geomatria, architecture. They're the builders of the new world. They're trying to get us to the golden age, if that makes sense. And so I just want to lay a little bit of foundation here. The things you're talking about is nothing new. These are the things that Yeshua, Jesus, in the Bible was competing against. He was speaking out against these things because the J's, or Judaism, right? That Judaism is literally that thing. It's Babylonian mysticism.
That's right.
So just to clarify. So sorry, I didn't want to interrupt. I wanted to lay some ground rules that we don't say these words because we'll get.
Oh no, I'm tracking, dude. I'm not. I know we're on YouTube, so I've walked through landmines before. This isn't a first time. But I'm glad you brought that up because there's also another correlation between the Freemasons and the Genesis, which is what are Masons? Brick and mortar. And Genesis 11, what does it talk about? It talks about bricks and mortar and the Tower of Babel. And their worship goes back to Nimrod. I had, you know who Dustin Nemos is? Have you heard the podcast he did with me?
No. Who's that?
Go check it out. He's got his own website, theserapeum.com. But it's interesting how he talks about Nimrod. And I know that the gentleman who passed away a couple years, I feel bad. I can never remember, not Mark Sargent, but the guy who preached, and he did a really in-depth sermon on Nimrod. And
oh gosh,
I feel terrible. Yeah, he just passed a year and a half ago. Yeah, I listened to all of his work. But you know, Nimrod, the Tower of Babel, the Bible is very specific about bricks and mortar being used, and their worship goes back to him. And to this day, I've always said that NASA is a modern day work of Nimrod, continuing the Tower of Babel, which was, why did they build it? Because they wanted to break through the firmament to get to heaven. And if you go back to the 50s with Operation Dominic and Operation Fishbowl, and not letting people into Antarctica for obvious reasons, and the space mission, which is nothing more than launching rockets into the sky and then cutting to Hollywood. The Red Hot Chili Peppers told us about that lie. But they are really, that has been their goal since Genesis 11, is to overthrow God. They think they can. Obviously, they can't. But there you go.
Yeah, you want to talk about what operation you're talking about? The Operation Fishbowl, Dominic, Paperclip, that kind of stuff?
Yeah. So certainly, Paperclip was the one that kicked it off. And obviously World War II has its own history as well. But after World War II, basically it was a fight between Russia and America to get hold of the scientists. Warner von Braun, who was in charge of the rockets over there, we brought him over. He's a legend in Huntsville, Alabama. The local arena is named after him. And of course, if you look at Warner von Braun's headstone, it has Psalms 19:1 on his headstone, which God shows his glory in the works of the firmament. So we got our hands on a lot of German scientists. German technology was so far ahead of our technology. I thought it's one of the things during World War II, which is very interesting, is in the late 30s, they already claimed and had been to Antarctica. It was labeled New Schwabia. So they bring Werner von Braun over, get NASA going, which, by the way, that's a podcast in itself. That's one of my early Fact Hunter podcasts. Jack Parsons and everything. There was a lot of the occult in the beginnings of NASA. JPL was originally known as Jack Parsons Laboratory. After the explosion and he died, whether or not it was an accident or not, they changed it to the Jet Propulsion Laboratory. So it kept the name JPL, but they just got rid of his name. They wanted to erase him with it because of all the people. Aleister Crowley was a huge influence on Jack Parsons. L. Ron Hubbard was a part of Jack Parsons' life. And L. Ron Hubbard was a horrible person. And of course, he wrote a science fiction book, which became a religion, which, again, you've heard many people talk about it. But they took these very smart people from Germany. They put him as the head of NASA, Werner von Braun, and they wanted to break through the firmament. So I don't remember which year it was. I think it was in the mid-50s. They actually started launching heavy arsenal, whether or not they were nukes or whatever they were at the time. We can even have that debate if nukes even exist. But they were certainly launching heavy payloads into the sky, and many people think they were trying to break through the firmament. There is still very original old video you can find with little trouble on YouTube of the explosions, and in some cases it does look like you can see the bright lights reflecting from the firmament. And I think it was a combination of, one, they realized they couldn't break through the firmament, and number two, I think it's just an observation, it's conjecture, we don't know, that in Antarctica that they found maybe where the firmament comes down, and they realized if they disclosed this information, that it would bring many people back to, or for the first time, to God. And the people who run the show down here couldn't have that. So I believe that's when they really, really full speed ahead with the space nonsense to get people to buy into it. And you'll notice a shift in television. I watch a lot of older TV shows, about 56, 57, 58. You start to see globes incorporated into everything on television. And the psychology and the effort they put in getting people to believe that we live on a spinning ball, that is spinning 1,000 miles an hour, chasing the sun at 66,000 miles an hour. They put a lot of effort into it. And that's why when you bring it up, it sets people off, because it is ingrained. When you're a child, they dangle the solar system above your crib. And every single TV show from about 57 on, you will find either a globe or a logo resembling a globe on TV, on the internet. When I was boarding a plane in Dallas last Sunday, on the side of the, what was it, American Airlines, I think, it said One World, and it had a globe on it. These things may be subtle to you, and you think they're just a logo or a saying. But again, you've got your Vanguards, you've got your BlackRocks. It's just like TV now. Most corporations are owned by these huge conglomerates like, Vanguard, BlackRock. So they put so much effort into this deceit. And that's why they had to fake the moon landing. It wasn't to beat the Russians. It would make America look bad. I mean, all that stuff is just absolute nonsense. They knew prior to 1969 that we couldn't go to the moon. Now the question therein lies, did those three guys know about it ahead of time? Or was it like Capricorn 1, where, they go to get in and a guy opens the door on the other side, says, hey, come with us, and they pull out? That is a big question, but it's known that all three are Freemasons. So, who knows? Without a doubt, Armstrong had a lot of guilt. He drank himself to death. And when he gave a speech at the White House in, I think, 1994, the 25-year anniversary, you could feel he was almost ready to say something. And I was like, man, you could change the world. But, I'm sure, they're told things about what would happen to their family if they disclosed it. So
I finally fixed the audio issue, so I don't have the echoes anymore. Just so you know, I was like trying to.
Oh, cool,
dude. He can't bring it up because okay. So, do you believe that these entities? We're talking about Gadriel and the Fallen and the Nephilim, which there's a lot of confusion regarding the Nephilim. The Nephilim are not the fallen angels; they're the children of the fallen angels. Okay, which were ruling the world before the flood. And then when it came to Nimrod, Babylon, which was after the flood, he became a Gibborim. And it says in Enoch that they used plants. And there's a growth hormone in plants called, what's it called? Gibberellium or something. It's interesting. Gibberellium. They became a Gibborim. They manipulated plants with human DNA to make humans continue to grow larger in a sense, I think. But do you think that these entities are real?
Are they real?
Yeah.
That's a great question. And again, it would just be an observation, just a guess. I don't know. Obviously God wiped out, that's the reason why he wiped out in the first place, was because, for lack of a better words, our DNA was tainted, right?
Right. Yeah.
With that being said, so that is the big question I have. And let me ask you this: I have, the guy who wrote the Genesis 6 conspiracy book. That's the biggest question. Like, so what happened after the flood? Whether it's a seed question, right? Whether it's a Cain seed line, or is it something more deeper than that?
Well, yeah, right? I think it's both. I think it is deeper. But when it comes to the Freemasons, the degrees of Masonism, according to them, when you become a 30th degree Mason, you get your own deity, angel, you get a guardian angel in a sense. And when you become a 33rd degree, then you are ruled over directly by an angel. Okay, let me clarify. So the Nephilim were the giants, the children of the fallen angels, and when the flood came, it wiped out the bodies of these Nephilim, and their spirits roam the earth, according to Enoch. Because that's what the demons are. The demons are these wandering spirits that no longer have bodies, and so they want to inhabit a body. So apparently in Freemasonism, Gadriel, who was the god who illuminated, right, who brought the secret knowledge, according to Freemasonism, when you become a 30th degree, you get your own demon in a sense, and when you're a 33rd degree, you're directly under Gadriel. That's the idea. And so if you were to disclose this, there would be massive repercussions on a spiritual level.
Absolutely.
He can't. This is where the control comes from, basically, is what I'm getting to.
Yeah, sure. Because people always ask, and it's something, obviously these people, again, all these rabbit holes are spiritual. It's good versus evil, right? That's really the bottom line if you want to make it bare bones. And that is the big question people ask. Well, if these people are taking directions from Satan and they are working with Satan, where's the communication coming from? I mean, are they having seances? Like, what's going on with the Rothschilds? How are they communicating? That is that makes sense to where that would be a way they can communicate. And I don't know if it's actually taking orders or it's just a very deep subject that I don't even think we'll know for sure until we go to the other side. Even the things we're talking about with the firmament and how the world actually works, these are things that we can just opine on. But there has to be a way these people are able to connect with the evil deities, just in the same way that we are able to connect with God. And people have these life-changing experiences where they do. Historically, through the Bible, people have received messages or been told from God, whether it's a burning bush or to build an ark. And I think it works the same on the other side as well. If you bend a knee and you choose worldly things over eternal life, then maybe there is a way that you can connect with evil. There are stories of, what's his name? I don't think it was Neil Young. It was the other guy, Bob Dylan. he sold his soul to the devil. And he admitted on 60 Minutes he has no idea how he wrote those songs. He couldn't do them today because he sold his soul to the devil. And he was able to, again, he chose worldly goods, to be rich and to travel the world over, sadly, eternal life. Our job here as followers of Christ is to share the gospel of Christ and make the world better than you found it. When I was in the military, when we came on a military base, we were there for a year, 15 months. We made sure to improve it the same way, improve it and leave it to the next people who were relieving us in better condition. And as not just Americans, not as I'm in Delaware, right? Not as a Delawarean, but just as a person, you should want to make the world better for your children. And I think we have seen, kind of shifting back to the other side, generation to generation, our country has gotten worse with each generation. The government's become larger. It's become more tyrannical. And at some point, you have to be willing to speak up. I think Timothy 3:12 says that if you follow Christ, you're going to expect to be persecuted. It's going to happen. And they're slowly integrating the steps to where, I don't know if it's our lifetime or not, but for lack of a better words, they're going to want to outlaw Christianity. And we saw, again, I'm going to walk the tightrope here, but over the last maybe 4 years ago, when a certain thing happened, and if you didn't accept a certain thing, you could lose your job. And again, I'm not here to criticize anybody who may have or not. That's not the point. But the point is, at some point, you have to understand there's two laws. There's God's law and there's man's law. And if man's law interferes with God's law, it's your responsibility, it's your duty to not observe man's law.
Totally. There's man, you said so much there that I would love to, I just want to keep asking questions though. But when it comes to, so when it comes to history and the war on Christianity, this has already been taking place through the Vatican.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
So this is the Third World War according to the builders, right? They won. So they instituted World War I, which was to institute this communist kind of state. World War II was to wipe out this is according to them, was to wipe out the Hebrew nationals, right? The bloodline of the Hebrews, to institute the Z's in the state of Israel. And so you have the Rothschilds and the United Nations who established that state under the banner of Saturn, which is that's the star of Remphan, under the banner of Saturn, which is the black sun. And so that was World War II, instituted that. When was Israel established? Well, that was in, was it 1940?
May of 1948.
Yeah, right after World War II, right? Yep. And then World War III, the one that they wanted to institute was to dilute and change. This is what Daniel's talking about. When it comes to like Bible prophecy and whatnot, is they wanted to, a great deception. They wanted to deceive people, dilute people into believing something is something that it's not, such as who Jesus is, who Yeshua is. And so when it comes to the Vatican, which they literally have the Egyptian obelisk right in the middle of the Vatican, they have their second beast on display there, which was Hermes, and Anubis is the second beast. So if we're looking at the beasts of Revelation, there's the dragon, which would be like Gadriel, right, who was a murderer from the beginning, as Yeshua talks about. And then you have, let's go with the Egyptian version. So you have Ra, the sun god. You have Osiris, which is the first beast, which is the reincarnation of the sun god. And then you have, what happened to my video there? I think I just froze out. Y'all can hear me though, right?
Yeah, you're loud and clear.
Huh. That's weird. Anyways, I'll just keep talking. I don't know what happened there. I'll turn off my camera and turn it back on to see if that works. And then you have Anubis, who is the second beast. So you have Ra, Osiris, and Anubis. Those are the beasts of Revelation. And if you know your history, you know the mythology that John at Patmos is talking about. His audience knew who these beasts were, and when he said Apollyon will come up from the I'll make you full screen. There we go. Apollyon would come up from the depths, and Apollyon is Osiris. He's the first beast, and he's also the god of the locusts. And you have all these locusts with stinger tails and wing who can fly and have the head of a lion or the face of a man, head of a lion, like things like that. And you're like, who is that? Well, that's the second beast, and everyone would know who they're talking about there. So that's so weird. What's going on with my...
I don't know. It looks like you're casting something out of a Star Wars movie.
Yeah, it's crazy. So you see it on your side too. So it has to do with my camera. Okay.
Yeah, and of course, when you get to NASA and their first mission, of course, they Apollo, right? And people don't realize, speaking of current events and people who say they control the world. But going back to the Vatican and the Roman Empire, just pull out a dollar bill, everything's in Latin. When I was in the military, all of our mottos were Latin. You look at all the structures in D.C., it's got the old Roman structure to it. So, and by the way, a lot of people don't know, but the Vatican owns close to 50% of the land in Israel.
Right. Yeah.
It's a big deal.
I'm focusing on my face here. Look at this. All right, here we go. Okay, I fixed it, I think. Sorry. Always technical difficulties. This is crazy. I'll do this. I'll fix our cameras there. There we go. Sorry about that.
You're good.
Yeah, so the Vatican is just a culmination of the Roman Empire, the Greek, the Babylonians. The Vatican is the same thing as all of that. And I think a lot of people don't understand that. And so we have a Jesuit, I didn't say the whole word, Jesuit black pope, right? And black, not skin color. Like
that's right.
There's when we're talking about the Masons and the Brotherhood, we have the White Brotherhood and the Black Brotherhood. And within each of those, there is the esoteric and the exoteric aspects. If you're the exoteric, the entire public is pretty exoteric. So when it comes to Freemasonry, it's like, oh, it's fine. Like, well, they do this and this, and it's like
bake sales and all kinds of nice things.
Yeah, and all that stuff. And those people, they're pretty innocent in regarding their understanding of these things. But then there's the esoteric, those who have the secret knowledge, who are pulling the strings. And there's very few of those. And so when it comes to all these historical events, such as the establishment of the Great Masonic Experiment of the United States, which was 1776, before that, people in the USA were free, really. I mean, is the British Empire really going to stop you from Britain if you wanted to go out west and build a house in the mountains? Well, guess what?
Not at all.
I can't do now. I can't do that. That's illegal. Why? Well, because we're slaves to the United States corporation. And
yeah, you're 100% right, and that is something as you go through your steps as being a truther, I should say, right? You start to figure out, well, this guy was a bad president. That guy, George Bush wasn't a good president, and then you find out that, well, Ronald Reagan took the entire medical industry off the hook. That's the reason why 2020 was allowed to happen. And you keep realizing that almost everybody in history they tell you are great, they're not. And then for me, when I actually went down the Lincoln rabbit hole and found out all the egregious things that he did, arresting 20,000 of his own citizens, he shut down, and this number is probably wrong, but it's like 3,000 or 4,000 newspapers throughout the North because they spoke out against him. Listen, every major war, and you covered those three wars spot on. And you can actually, if you want to read it firsthand, Albert Pike's Morals and Dogmas, you can find it on the Internet Archive, or if you can't find it, just send me an email or jump in the website and in the chat room, leave me a message. I'll email you a PDF copy. It's 33 chapters long, and it's basically explaining the trip, but it also talks about those three world wars. And if you look at our current history, and with everything that's going on, and what he describes as the Third World War, it will raise your alarm a little bit.
Yeah, man. Everyone's waiting for World War III. Well, it's already happened. And
exactly. It's underway. It's just we haven't been pulled in yet. And I use that word yet very strongly.
Well, yeah, they've been trying but to pull us into the age of Aquarius, and which
yes, sir.
Okay, yeah. So according to the heavens, like, solar eclipses don't mean anything. All right, or is it lunar eclipses? Which one's when the moon blocks the sun?
I think that's lunar.
That's lunar eclipse. All right.
Yeah.
Lunar eclipses don't mean anything according to the Bible, really. I mean, there's signs and there's seasons, but according to the occult, they mean everything. They usher in, that's the Eye of Ra. So that ushers in a new age, and specifically when they happen within their gematria, within their time. So Daniel warns about the times and the seasons will be changed. Well, guess what's changed? Our calendar has changed, which happened in Antiochus Epiphanes in 170 BC. Changed the temple calendar of the Jews. He established his own calendar, which switched from a solar to a lunar calendar, because he wanted to have a birthday every month, and there was 13 months sometimes in the solar calendar. And guess what? The Jays still follow a calendar. This last year they had 13 months, and that's why a lot of people who are like have gone down the rabbit hole of finding the true timeline, the true calendar that's in the Bible, that's in Enoch. Honestly, there's no calendar in the Bible. Yeshua and the disciples, Jesus and his emissaries, they had Enoch. And so they didn't need to have the calendar in other books. It was in Enoch. And so there's a lot of things in Scripture that point to Enoch. It's the most quoted book in the Bible. More quoted than in the New Testament. It's the most quoted book in the New Testament. More quoted than even the book of Psalms, which David wrote. Enoch is quoted more. And so when it comes to that, whenever the emissaries are talking about we're children of the light, we're not children of the dark, that's specifically talking about calendars. So those who would follow the lunar calendar, which is of the night, and the solar, which is of the day. So we're the children of the day. We follow. So it's really interesting, these calendars. So a lot of people switch to following a calendar from Enoch, because right now in the United States, we're following the Gregorian calendar, which was instituted by Pope Gregory of the Vatican, and that's obviously not the same. It's a three. Yeah. Anyways, that's a rabbit hole. If you want to go down that, that's worth looking into. And so, but according to the Babylonian mystics, they have their own calendar, and Daniel warns about that the adversary will come and he'll seek to change the times, the season, the appointed times, which is correlated with the calendar. And he would seek to change the law. So you talked earlier about how the law, follow the law of God and not the law of man. Don't follow Babylon, follow Eden, basically, is the idea.
There you go. Yeah, that's a great analogy. That's well done. Can I ask you a question?
Yeah,
because we've already talked about the book of Enoch, and obviously, is it Joshua 10:13 that refers to the book of Jasher? Why do you think the King James version decided to leave out we'll say at least the 14 books of the Apocrypha, which was in the Geneva Bible, which was part of the Reformation?
Because I think it discloses all this stuff that if you ask the average Christian in America about any of this stuff, it's going to be like, whew.
Oh, yeah.
They have no
look
clue.
At you like a deer in the headlights.
Yeah. But it's interesting because who canonized the Bible? Men, councils did.
That's right. Council of Nicaea, etc.
Yeah, the Bible was never canonized throughout history. There were individual scrolls. There was the scroll of Isaiah, the scroll of all the prophets, the Torah. These scrolls were individual scrolls, and it was a library. And then they canonized the Bible, and they left out certain books. And coincidentally, when it comes to Enoch, who was a prophet, according to writers of Scripture, that Enoch was a prophet. And coincidentally, they left that out, which outlines the entire creation, what it looks like, who's over it, who the watchers are, who are the fallen angels that came down on Mount Hermon, who deceived mankind, who took up wives, who it names them like Azazel, Gadriel. It names them by name. They don't want you to know that information because then they can deceive you. And I tend to think if the Earth is flat, right? Say I don't know if it's flat per se, but
sure.
I think personally we live on the linear plane of a torus field. It's all electromagnetic, everything around us, and the sky is moving around us like swirling in the ether and stuff like that. But I think that when it comes to understanding that we live on a plane with a firmament, it's created. It's a created creation, which means there's a creator. And if there's a creator and he sets angels over charge of the creation, these entities are 100% real. And the watchers, coincidentally, are the lowest class of Elohim, but yeah, they're real, man. Like they have to be real if you believe the earth is the way it is, flat, and it's not a ball, and we're not an accident. We're actually special. We were created for a purpose, created on day 6 to take care of the creation, like you were talking about. That's why we were created, is to take care of this place and to do the work of the Creator. And yeah, man, all that stuff's very important. And all that information was left out of the biblical canon, the KJV version, as you're getting into. It was all left out so that everyone's just ignorant of it. And when you talk to a modern Christian, I like to call it pop Christianity. Not everyone. I'm not trying to lay a blanket statement, but
no, I gotcha.
People who are ignorant of this stuff. In fact, they've been trained to have a disposition against these books, and I understand that there's some skepticism with like Jasher and stuff. Like, I don't think that that's the original Jasher that's mentioned in Joshua, the Jasher that we have today. There's some books that were like came about way later than, we don't have the transcripts, the historical transcripts of these books. But yeah, man, it kind of drives me crazy when you're trying to talk to someone and they're like, nah, like, no, Enoch, that's not good. Why isn't it good?
I know. You said it so well. And when you talk, we were just talking about the Illuminati earlier, and what it means is to be illuminated. And how they do that is they keep knowledge from the 99%. And if you look at the order of things, precisely, you had Copernicus in the 1500s, the 30-year war, and then listen. To be at the top of the food chain, whether it's 2020 or 1611, you have to be a part of the club. And of course, they'll put King James up on a pedestal and say how awesome he was. But I agree with you. There was a reason that they left these books of the Bible out of it, because they wanted to keep knowledge from us. And, you were talking about pop Christianity. Well, that's because the people who control the textbooks are the same people who control the seminaries. And, most churches, they want you to have your at least minimum bachelor's degrees, if not a master's. And what that is 6 years of being told these books, you don't look at these books. And you go to 99% of the pastors around here, if you bring up any of those books, Enoch specifically, you'll get browbeaten. So again, all of this matrix that we live in is very cleverly created, from second level education, from colleges to seminaries, and now I mean, you look at the Methodist Church, the Unitarians. I mean, they have been fully infiltrated with their, LMNOP plus people running churches, and it's just gotten completely out of control.
Yeah, and if you want to know the stream by which this takes place, you have Illuminati, right? Illuminated by Gadriel, the Lucifer, the angel of light, right? So you have Gadriel, who is at the top of the pyramid, Eye of Horus, or Eye of Ra, whatever, Horus is the son of Ra, Osiris. Oh, wait, I don't know. I get it mixed up. Anyway, so when it comes to the Illuminati, so what they do is they send you to educate you in the exoteric information, not the esoteric. So esoteric is the insiders, right? Exoteric is the outsiders who don't have all the knowledge, but they train you on this exoteric to do their bidding. And they do that through the universities. And guess what you're called after you come out of university? Alumni. You're illuminated with the exoteric information. And guess what's plugged into the universities? Seminaries. So you're plugged in to this educational system as a teacher of the Word of God. And you're told, hey, don't look at these things, teach these things. Don't look at that, teach this. And that's what happens in seminaries. And so people are literally trained. And guess what? You can't, according to a lot of these church denominations, a denomination is like a division of a way to control the, so like money has denominations. You have $1, $5 a denomination of money, $10 a denomination of money, 20 is a denomination, and it just makes it more controllable. So these churches, they have educated who have been educated in the exoteric understanding to teach the masses this exoteric information to keep them from the secret knowledge of the esoterics, who believe who their God is Gadriel, the one who freed you from the Creator, because you don't want to be bound by the Creator's law. That's slavery. So we're going to free you. This is the land of liberty, of Columbia. We have the Statue of Liberty out there, Columbia, the goddess, who's the female version of Helios, right? And you have the District of Columbia. There's temples to Columbia in Washington, D.C., and you have the womb of Isis, and you have the obelisk, the Washington Monument, and you have all this imagery that goes all the way back to Babylon, and people are just completely ignorant of it. It drives me insane, and they don't want to know. That's weird to me.
Yeah, they'd rather not, because I'll tell you what, Josiah, it's just because they know it's going to turn the world upside down. I used to be able to tell you this Phillies baseball player was, on May 9th was batting .289 with 34 home runs. He completely flips your life upside down, and people don't want that to happen. And man, DC, you talk about a rabbit hole. DC is right between, it's mockery. It's between Virginia and Maryland, right? The Washington Monument is 55 feet, 5 inches. Multiply that by 12. Tell me what you come up with.
Go look at it. 666.
Right? Exactly. Look at an aerial photo of DC. It's in the shape of an owl, which has references to Moloch and very occultish things.
And Moloch of course, is Ra, and Ra is Gadriel, the dragon.
There you go. And then, of course, just turn over your dollar bill. The pyramid and the eye that you've been talking about is right on the back of your money, which is interesting. A guest I just interviewed, which will drop Sunday night on the Flat Earth Files, made a good point. What was German money known in before, the euro became a thing? It was the Deutsche Mark, right? Money is used to what? To buy and sell.
To mark, to mark you.
Yeah, exactly. So, and I think that's another thing that we may come across in our lifetime, this digital currency that a lot of people are championing, which I don't know why anybody would want that.
Well, it's just the upgrade from our current currency that is instituted by the Fed already, which is this, it's evil, and it's run by the Nephilim. It's a Nephilim currency system, and you can look at the dollar bill. There's the owl on there, which is Molech.
Yep.
You have obviously the pyramid, and the
Yep.
eye of Horus. That's Egypt, and it goes all the way back. They're telling you right on the, like, if you use this, you're agreeing to our terms, right? Basically, you don't have to do any of that really, but we submit to it because it's like, I don't see any other option. Like, what else can I do? And that's where I'm at. I'm like, what else can I do? Well,
Right.
and now they've gotten to the point where, like, they're really squeezing. They're like, okay, now we're going to squeeze the heck out of these younger generations. Like, if you see the cost of living has gone from the 60s.
Skyrocket.
The income of the median household income has not changed much since the 50s and 60s, but the cost of living is like, I want to say 1,000%. It's crazy, man. You can't buy a house even if you want one. And even if you do, even if you buy land, you don't own it. You have to pay property
taxes. That's right.
It's like, dude, we pay more in taxes than the Israelites did in Egypt.
Absolutely. And if you believe the official narrative where, we started a revolution because of a tax on tea and other things, where we are today. I played a 90-minute little thing that I found on Twitter the other night. It was this guy for 90 seconds just reeled off everything we pay taxes on, right? You buy a new car, you got to get it registered. What is that? It's a tax. You want to go fishing, you got to get a fishing license. What is that? That's a tax. Hunting, sales tax, property tax. I owned a company after I retired from the military. I started a medical supply business. When I hired, a lot of people don't know this, when I hired employees, whatever they paid in taxes, I had to match. So it's, they love people opening up business because they get, if that person's paying $100 in tax, I got to pay $100 in tax. It's outrageous. Sales tax. Texas, when I left 4 years ago, I think it was 8.25%. And like you said earlier, people know that the system we're living in is broken. It can't be fixed. It's like you're driving a 1973 Pinto with 500 million miles on it. It's done. It can't be repaired. But then the question is, we're all at this stage now. I think a lot of people in the truth community, we're doing our podcasts, our YouTube channels, we're having these conversations, and I think we're all looking for, like, well, what's the next step? How do we correct this wrong? And again, part of the problem is, you have a young child that is just in trouble all the time, but you never discipline them. They're going to continue to be in trouble and try to get away with things. Well, that's our government in a nutshell. They're to the point now that they know these people, they only care about their football and baseball and the movies and golf and whatever else. So they don't even try to hide their evil anymore, in my opinion.
No, they don't. They want us to believe it. And I outline it this way. I've done a video on Medea. Medea, who is an enchantress. She's a witch, and basically in Greek mythology. So Medea, we call her media. And so when we comes to Hollywood and media, Hollywood is the wood that's used in witchcraft, which goes back to Babylon as well. All this goes back to Babylon, and it's constructed by the builders, the Masons. They've built this system to indoctrinate the people with this exoteric understanding. And I describe it this way, that whatever you see on television, our children are raised up watching screens, televisions, and they see what Medea wants to show you regarding these things, regarding what a label, right? For instance, like a dad. You look at a dad on TV, and she tells you what a good dad looks like. So if your dad doesn't do that, he's a bad dad, right? And so it's this pressure mediation system that Medea is instilling into people. So Hollywood is the thing that is the wood that's used in wands to cast spells. What is the cast? Well, the cast is like the stars of Friends. Like, you have Jennifer Aniston and all these other actors and actresses. They're the stars, and they're the cast. And now they're casting these flicks. They call them flicks, which is a lure. Flick is a lure. You cast a lure and it flickers with light and sparkles, and so it's this flicker, which is a way to keep attention, right? And so they cast it, and they don't just cast it now; they broadcast it using a network. So they broadcast a net over a stream, and they catch all these people, specifically our children. What did Medea do? She murdered her children in Greek mythology. So they're capturing your children with these ideologies, these understandings of, hey, if you want to be a good person, you care about saving the planet, right? You have to first believe in a planet, which they put the globe everywhere. So now you can save the planet. Your god, Gaia, needs saving. You need to save Gaia. And in order to do that, you need to protect the environment in these ways. Kill the cows, right? For instance, which is one of the that's one of the best food sources we have on the planet.
Absolutely.
Or on the creation is I still slip. But,
me too.
but it's like kill the cows because they fart too much. It sounds like a parody. It sounds like a joke. But your kids watch these things, and even good things like fatherhood and motherhood. Your kids watch Medea. Medea teaches them this is what a good dad looks like, but it's a lie. And it's not. That's not what a good dad. Every dad in every movie is an idiot. He's a pushover. That's what a good dad looks like, according to Medea. But that is not biblical. That is not according to the Creator, who put man over as the head of households and stuff like that.
That's right.
Not to be overpower his household, but to protect and to provide. And now it's almost impossible to provide. It's almost impossible to protect. It's crazy, man.
Yeah, the commercials too. Every father's just a bumbling idiot moron, and the wife just looks at him, with just what a moron. And that is where we're at. And again, going back to 2020, there's the corporation called Act Blue, which raised a lot of the money that was used to fund the things that we saw from, let's just say, May 2020 and until the fall of 2020. That's what they do. That they take that money, they use media, they even use video games. That they've literally infiltrated every single aspect of our lives. And today, it's more difficult than ever to be a vigilant parent because evil is coming 360 degrees. Yeah. So that's one of the reasons why we chose our last child. She's 14 to homeschool her, because in 2020, when we kind of looked into the Zoom and saw what was going on, and then just look at the rates of illiteracy. I mean, you think about it. A child sits in a classroom for 13 years, and they don't know this, they don't know that. Well, what's really going on? A school shouldn't be a daycare, but back in the late 70s is when they really destroyed our local communities. They broke our local bonds. When I grew up in the 70s, I knew every single person on the street, who they were, their children. Hi, Mr. Smith, my mom needs a cup of sugar. Now, most people don't even know who their neighbor is, their name. Everybody is just in their own little shell.
Yeah, I know.
And we talk about you talk about the double-edged sword of technology. You and I, you're in Utah, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm in Delaware, you're in Utah, we're having a conversation, and people from around the world are watching. That's awesome. But at the same time, I think it has put a wall around us. And I really realized when I went April 19th and 20, when I did the live show in Oklahoma City and in Waco, Texas, to see people physically come together for the first time, because I've been doing podcasts and YouTube, things like this for years, but to do something in person and to watch people really speak passionately, shake hands, share phone numbers, and break bread together, that's really, if you want to make a difference, it's got to start locally. Meet like-minded people, You don't have to be a radio host or a podcaster to find like-minded people in your community. There are ways to use their tools, just like right now, Josiah and I are using the tools against the people who are trying to keep us quiet. And you can do the same too. Just find local people, get together, Bible studies, all of these things. Find like-minded people and build your community. You got to, if you're going to build a house, you have to start with a good foundation. And I encourage everyone, if you really want to make a difference, number one, you're going to have to get out of your comfort zone. I still, to this day, I get a little nervous when I get behind the microphone. I've been doing this for a long time, but I understand that the platform I have, and I don't want to embarrass myself or my family, and I'm just one guy giving my opinion. But if we are to make a difference, and if we are to go full circle here, to leave the world in a better place than we found it, and I think this would be the first generation to do so in a long time. And really, it started with the two big events that people may not even realize. The World of the War event of 1939, when they played that on the radio, and 7 million people across the country called 911, and Bernays was alive at that time. Everybody, if you haven't gone down the Edward Bernays rabbit hole, check him out. His great nephew runs Netflix, so that should tell you about staying away from Netflix. But then, of course, 1969.
Most people don't know what you're talking about, I would say. You want to describe what you're talking about?
Yeah, so Edward Bernays is one of the most powerful psychologists in history. Most people compare, him and Goebbels in order to control the mind, understanding the mind. Edward Bernays was the master of propaganda. Yeah. Easter Sunday, 1929, 1930, somewhere around there. He was the one behind the Easter parade. I forget what they called it. It's when all the women pulled out their cigarettes and lit up. There's a famous phrase for it, advertised and slogan. He is the guy who convinced people to put fluoride in their water. He's the guy that convinced doctors to say that these cigarettes are safe. This guy is the master of propaganda, and now his great nephew. These things are generational. You look at all these families. Go read Fritz Springmeier's 13 Bloodlines of the Illuminati. Understand how these things are passed down generation to generation. You should stay as far away from Netflix as you can, because it's all on the surface, right? You work all day, 40, 50 hours a week. You just want to put your feet up and be entertained. But at the root of it, we're paying for our indoctrination. We're paying to be stuck inside of a cage.
You enter entertainment. And
yeah,
it's a Netflix. It's a flickering net that you get caught in. So, the words are right in the title, guys. So
yeah, absolutely. And the words, the logos, it all has meanings. They just don't come up with it. It all has meaning. And but again, the second big event was obviously the moon landing, and when everybody bought it, and it was risky for them, I'm sure. But when they pulled that off, all bets were off. And that's the big reason why we are today. It is that's what people don't understand, is because people believe the moon landing is the same reason they were allowed to get away with what happened in 2020.
Yep. Because the moon landing, what it did is it established this globe idea.
Yep.
Well, guess what? It was a blurry photo. And it's provably not a real photo of the entire Earth. Okay, so
that's right.
There's a rabbit hole. Go check it out. It was taken in low Earth orbit. And anyways, so there was a lot of the photos that NASA released. They're composite images. They're images layered on top of images. They weren't counting on Photoshop, because you can take these images into Photoshop. You can change the gamma and the contrast and stuff, and you can see square boxes around certain things. They're layered images. And then you realize, okay, there was no photos taken. They're all composite images from 1972 until 2014. Why? Well, because camera technology improved a lot, and it got really, really difficult to fake it after that. Because you can fake something blurry, but it's really, really difficult to fake something. My camera froze again. What the heck's going on with that? That's crazy.
Got the thumbs up.
Anyways. I'll unplug it and I'll put you full screen again.
No worries.
And
You're
I'll
on a
fix
roll,
dude. But this is what happens when I'm on a roll. The technology messes up, man.
Yeah.
It's those dang. Yeah. All right. Anyways, so I lost my train of thought pretty much because I froze up. There we are. I'm back. At least on the stream, I'm back. I'll fix it for you in a
Yeah,
sec.
no worries. You were just talking about, go ahead.
Yeah, the deception, what they established when they went to the moon. They went to the moon, which I think is a plasma, or probably. I don't know. I can't go up there myself and see. It definitely looks like a ball in the sky. I'm not going to lie. It looks like that. But when it comes to like the way it illuminates, like there's no hot spot on it. It's weird. Like balls have hot spots. You put a light, and even a rock has a hot spot on it when you shine a light at it. The moon doesn't. There's no hot spot. It just is illuminating in a certain way. All the craters are the same depth, coincidentally. And comparing our moon to other moons around other planets or whatever, according to the heliocentric model, our moon is way too big and way too light. They said when they sent something up there that it rang like a bell. I think they just hit the firmament personally, and that.
Yeah, I agree.
And then, so there's already in heliocentrism, you have all this weird stuff regarding the moon and what it is. But if we could go there and we can land on it, then we can prove that we live on a planet, right? We'll take a photo of the planet. The blue marble is the greatest deception that's ever taken place, which is provably a composite image. You can.
Right.
There's copied clouds and stuff. Even NASA themselves says it is composite, but it has to be, right? The creator of that image. So it's nuts. And when you look at people ask this, they're like, well, why does it matter? Like, I'm still going to go to work in the morning, which is true. You're still going to go to work and do that kind of stuff. But it should completely change your outlook. It should completely open your eyes to what you are putting the future generations through, right? We shouldn't be educating our children on lies because what does that create? It creates a world created by Medea, the enchantress, that enslaves us, and that's where we're at now. Anyways, I'm going to fix this for you real quick.
Yeah, no worries. Yeah, you hit the nail on the head. And that's the hardest part, I think, and the most frustrating part is getting them to understand what it means. And even in some cases, when you show them, like, again, the very first episode of the Flat Earth Files is Why the Lie? And the importance of this particular deception. And then, but at the same time, I feel like I'm talking to a wall. I took my local pastor right down the street here. We live out in the country. There's a little church at the end of the street. I took him out to lunch 2 or 3 weeks ago, and I wanted to talk about him, but you could tell, they are programmed, especially with the current events that are going on, and the divisiveness. And instead of praying for peace and praying for everyone, they're praying for one side. They have really, I can't stress enough that so many pastors, and that's what there's, again, with the blessing of YouTube, there's some great pastors out there on YouTube. Alabama, I follow a guy in Montana. It's just because it is so hard. I've been to every church, Josiah, within a 15-mile radius of my house. And and listen, I'm not a Bible scholar. I'm not, but at the same time, if I'm going to church, right, if I'm going to have an operation, I want the best surgeon. If I'm going to court, if the CIA frames the fact hunter and wants to take me down like they have so many other truthers, I want the best lawyer. If you're going to go to a church, you should not settle for a pastor. You should find the best pastor that resonates with you, that teaches the message that you believe in. And that's one of the great things about the internet is I have been able to find great ministers. I wish I could find somebody local, because going back to Waco and Oklahoma City, meeting people in person, there is really power in fellowship, really, praising together. That is very important. But at the same time, I'm not going to. I'm not willing to sacrifice my beliefs just to fit into a crowd.
Totally, man. Yeah. Oh man, I was gonna say something. Yeah. So where is this leading to? What I mean, so when you're talking about the current state of affairs over there in the Middle East right now, there's an interesting aspect that a lot of people don't understand is that World War II wiped out the real Jays. Not
Correct.
all of them, most of them, but the ones in charge. What are they called? They're called Ashkenazi Jays. Right?
That's right.
Ashkenazi. Where's that word come from? Well, if
That comes from the. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
You go. Yeah,
I was going to say it comes from the Khazarians, which just happen to come from the Ukraine region.
Well, then after World War II, what happened in World War II? Who killed off them in World War II?
Well, if
Nazis. I don't say that. I shouldn't have said that online.
that's why I was tiptoeing.
Khazarian, Ashkenazi,
yeah.
Khazarian Nazis, Ashkenazi Jays. That's what That's what the Z's are. Zionists. The one who are running that state, which was established by the United Nations, which was also funded by the Rothschilds and stuff like that. It's like, who is over there? Who's doing that stuff? And if you're supporting the star of Remphan, that's literally the banner that the worship of Saturn, that emblem is the emblem of Saturn, the black sun. Like, what are we doing? Like, what people are just, and again, this goes back to why were these books taken out of our canon? They were not included in the canon. They were included in like the Ethiopian canons and stuff like that. But the councils who now are the Vatican, took these books out. Why? Because the Vatican worships Saturn, and they don't want you to know that. That's the real
100%.
issue here. And so when it comes to church, like you're 100% spot on. Like, you have to have a pastor who wants to know the truth and teach the truth, not this exoteric illumination that they were trained in seminary. They have to be someone who seeks out truth. What does Scripture say? If you seek me, you will find me. It says, prove all things, hold fast to that which is true. Right? And then when you go back to Babylon, they were creating a Shem for themselves. Right? So you have the Watchers who came down, had children. The children became giants. They were ruling over the earth. Yahweh sent the flood, which wiped out the giants. The spirits of those Nephilim had nowhere to go. There's no place in Sheol for them. There's no place in heaven for them. They wander the earth until final judgment, right? But their bodies were wiped out, but they're still around. After the flood came Babylon, Nimrod, who tapped into those daemons, these demonic spirits, who are the children of the Watchers. Well, most of those Watchers were locked up in Tartarus, according to Scripture, but one was not, because he did not create children. So what happened at Babylon is they were creating a Shem for themselves, a name. And you see this in the Babylon story in Genesis 11. They were seeking to create a name for themselves. And I remember when I read that, I was like, what the heck? And nothing would be impossible for them. They all spoke the same language. They were creating a name for themselves, a Shem. Sham. Basically. Yep. It's really pronounced Sham rather than Shem. Shem is the lineage that came from Noah, the set-apart lineage. Shem, who was perfect in his generations. Noah was perfect in his generations. His son Shem is where Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, David, all the way to Yeshua came from the line of Shem. This is the true lineage that comes from Adam. Now, Babylon, the Shem lineage, is it's a counterfeit lineage. And this is still what we're encountering today with these builders who worship Gadriel, their father. Jesus says, you worship your father, the devil, who was a murderer from the beginning. Well, what did Gadriel do? Well, he gave them weapons and He was a murderer for all intents and purposes, and they worshipped him. It's Babylon, Babylonian mysticism.
That's
and when
right.
it comes to the modern day, nothing has changed. I mean, I can drive through Utah, and there's all these temples set up, and it's because I'm in Mormon territory here in
Yep.
Utah. There's
Yes,
all
you
these
are.
temples set up, which is an offshoot of the Brotherhood, the Masons, and it's like none. And you go to Starbucks, who's that? Well, that's ISIS. You know, the logo at Starbucks is ISIS. Go to your local ISIS and get yourself a coffee.
Get
right?
you a $7 coffee.
I'm running this program on an Apple computer,
Yeah,
which is an apple, the forbidden fruit.
that's right.
Bitten out. What was the first Mac sold for?
$666.66.
This stuff is real, and it's everywhere. I used to think that, when I was reading scripture and it was talking about idolatry, like the 10 Commandments, you shall have no other gods. Don't make any carved images for yourselves. I was like, oh, that's weird. Who would do that? Like, I don't have any carved images. I don't worship these other gods. It's everywhere. Idolatry and these carved images and these symbols, look for the symbols. Look at your dollar bill, for goodness sake. Like, it's everywhere. And in scripture, the God of fortune, his name is God. In God we trust is on your dollar bill. GAD, which is pronounced God, is the God. It's the pagan god of fortune. So when the KJV took out the name of God, the name of Yahweh, out of all, it's just Lord, 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 which is derived from El, Gadriel of God. El is their God. That's Baal. And so, like, you have to look at which God do you trust in? Which God? I'm not a sacred namer. Like, I'm not saying like, oh, you have to say Yeshua. You have to say, but you don't have to say Yahweh. You can say Jehovah. You can say whatever. I don't care. But you have to know which one you're speaking about. And you have to be able to explain which one you're talking about. Because these gods, these little G gods, they're Elohim. They're watchers, right? Which again is like the lowest class of Elohim who wanted to have children for themselves and whatnot. But like, these are the deities that the governments around the world, the puppet masters, they worship. They literally go to a giant owl in the woods, which is Molech, and they do seances. You look at CERN, they have Shiva, who is the female version of Apollyon, doing the cosmic dance outside of CERN. I can keep going on and on about all this stuff, but it's like, it's real. It's everywhere. You just have to open your eyes. You have to look at what words they're showing you. Like we talked about Netflix. It's a flickering net which contains you, which you enter the containment of, entertainment, from media, from Hollywood, who is casting these spells using stars who are idols, and like, it's everywhere, man. It's like, just look at the words. Even our language itself, the Latin language is a cursed language. So like, we call it, when we write out a word, we call it spelling. We spell words.
Yep.
It's a spell. It's witchcraft. And we write using curses. What's another aspect of it? Sentence. We create sentences. So we sentence one another to the curses of our spells just with the language that we speak. So we're like, when scripture says we're looking through a glass dimly, it's like, no kidding, man. No kidding. You really have to love truth, and you have to seek truth in order to find it, especially in today's world. It's nuts.
And the truth isn't always sugar and ice cream. Sometimes the truth is a punch in the nose. That's why so many people are afraid to take the red pill, is because it does turn your life upside down. But Why would you want anything else? And why would you want to teach your children anything based on lies? By the way, just to put a bow on it, if you really want to know what we're talking about as far as current events and the Star of Remphan, which, by the way, I don't think the Star of David is even mentioned in the Bible, is it?
No.
Yeah. But the 7 letters that were written to the 7 churches of Asia, the first 7 chapters of Revelation, I think it was John the Elder wrote them. The second letter and the third letter to Smyrna and Philadelphia, the ninth verse of both of those chapters, 2:9 and 3:9, speak about that during end times there will people who will be claimed to be, but they are not. They are liars, and a lot of that is what we are seeing today. So it's biblical. This isn't me conspiracy. This is biblical, and
the synagogue of Satan.
That's it. The synagogue of Satan. It's good stuff. But I just want to give you a heads up. I have about 5 more minutes or so. I've got another interview at the top of the hour.
Awesome. Anything you want to close with? Like, what are your thoughts on politics? We're in an election year. I would say, like, beware of the Hegelian dialectic.
Yep.
And I don't even involve myself at all with any of that stuff.
No.
What are your thoughts?
The federal government, even according to what's on record. By the way, there is 800,000 pages of federal law. That is a fact. I read that last night. Like, that's how much we need to be at this point repealing laws. We don't need any more laws. But the federal government, none of the agencies are really entitled to exist. If I ever heard a candidate say that they would dissolve the FBI, the CIA, the IRS, Homeland Security, FEMA, and all the other things, maybe, just maybe, I'd be on board. But we know nobody, they're selected, they're not elected. And people still don't get that. They'll tell their child, if you work hard enough and go to school, maybe you can be president. Man, you've got 330 million Americans, and you got people from the same family that are president. How can people not see that this is simply a divide and conquer scheme that is created by them to keep us fighting amongst each other while they continue to pillage our country and other countries. The Hegelian dialect, you better be ready, because they're going to set something off that is going to try to get you to react a certain way. And I know most people who are listening to this channel, because if you follow Josiah, you're a smart person. So make sure that you have your critical thinking cap on 24/7 for the next several months, because 1, it's an election year. Number 2, I still have some friends in the Intel community, outside the Intel community. There may be some significant events coming in even weeks. But again, that's just from what we hear. It could happen. It could not happen. It could be in June. But it's going to happen this year. Whether
you don't think it's already happened with what's happening in the Middle East?
I think that is but there is going to be a larger scale event, because here's the thing: they're going to have Americans to get on board, and right now there's not enough emotional value that has been put out there to get people invested into, say, going to CBDC, to sending our children off to another war, or whatever it could be. Mm-hmm. There's been a lot of exercises in the United States and Canada. It's on my website, thefacthunter.com. Canada this weekend is having an exercise where the military is going around and simulating a welfare check in this city. They're going to be knocking on their doors, simulating, hey, are you good? Like, none of these things are good. This weekend they're having an event in Los Angeles. They're simulating a nuclear event. Well, what happened during 9/11? They were doing they were doing drills, right? And then, of course, you had Event 201, which was just a few months before they kicked things off. So you really have to keep your head on a swivel. And when these things are splashed across your TV, they're going to try to invoke emotions from you to react a certain way. Take a breath, step back, analyze it, realize what they're trying to do before you make, before you go all in, screaming for blood.
Yeah, I would say 100% perfectly well said. So when it comes to politics, you have the left wing, right wing, of the
Yep.
same bird.
Same
This
bird.
is the Hegelian dialectic, which is basically the means justify the end according
That's right.
to their mission, basically. And so you have the white brotherhood and you have the black brotherhood. And these two things, they're at war with one another. A lot of them are unaware of what's happening on the inner circle. But the inner circle, it's like a chessboard. This is what the builders are doing. They're moving pieces of the chessboard. There's white spaces, black spaces. They're moving to get to the end of the game. But the white does not mean good. It's a false light, as Scripture talks about. There's the evil, right, side, and a lot of people are like, oh, I'm against the evil, but it's like, well, are you aligned with the white aspect of the evil? Because that is the false light. So you really have to separate. So there's true light, which is the Father in heaven, and then you have the false light, and then the dark. The false light and the dark, which is what you're exposed to exoterically. This is what you're trained to see. And that's why they have their third eye, right? That's what that stands for, is they're able to see the spiritual, the greater goal of the matters. And you're not allowed to see any of that. That's their secret knowledge. And so you really have to separate yourself from politics and not be like, oh, I'm all for Trump. Well, guess what? Trump is Jesuit trained. Jesuit training takes 17 years. That's insane, man. So you have to look at, and they're all like Biden, Trump, they're Zionists. They're trying to establish that, the golden age, which if you're aware of what happened in the days of Joshua and whatnot, who was in the land of Israel? Who was there? The giants were there. The Gibborim were there, right? And so I talk a little bit about the timeline and whatnot, but we're out of time. And it was awesome having you, George.
It's been incredible. It's always good catching up with you. I'd like to do it again because there's so many things. I still wanted to talk about homeschooling and the education system and doing things that you think you can't, but you really can. But
we're homeschooling
hopefully
and we're broke as heck.
But God will provide you.
Yeah. My daughter's learning to build like survival shelters. She's reading books on what do you do when an earthquake happens, and not to like freak her out. She loves Slack learning. I'm not telling her what to learn. She's just learning that stuff on her own. And so
absolutely.
Yeah, it's awesome. Anyways, awesome speaking to you, George. Everyone go check out Fact Hunter on Spotify. Also check out Flat Earth Files on Spotify. You also have a website for the Flat Earth Files. What's that?
Yeah, the flatearthfiles.com, which we will be, it needs an update badly, but a lot of people hang out in the chat room and they leave their thoughts in the forum. That'll be revamped next week. We just revamped the Fact Hunter website. We've got news, blog. We have people coming on who are going to write for us opinion pieces, break down classic audio like Bill Cooper and folks we have on. We do Sunday night classic audios. We upgraded our radio. So we're just doing everything we can to, basically that's our mission, is just to show people the truth through various aspects, and media's, to realize, like, again, we're in a fight, good versus evil. It's an exciting time to be alive. People shouldn't stress. We talk about all these things, but still go about, live your life. You should be excited that God chose you to be in this timeline right now, because he knows that you're strong enough and you can handle it. And don't let the world stress you out. Live your life, love your family, and praise God.
Awesome. Thanks, George. Thank you, everyone, for watching. And until next time, keep your head on a swivel, as George says.